This is how you can build a website all from scratch, completely customized to exactly what you want with AI. In this video, I'm going to recreate my entire landing page for my consulting site, Horizon Labs. I'm going to show you the exact process I use to make this site and how you can do the same if you want to make your own custom website with AI. And trust me, I may not know how to code that well, or maybe even at all for that matter, but I do know how to get what I want out of the chatbot and utilize it to build amazing custom websites for any project I may have. You don't need to have any prior programming knowledge for this tutorial, although it will help, but you do need to have the mindset to want to learn and actually attempt to understand coding lingo. So enough talk, let's get into building your very own custom website with AI. So first, what you're going to want to have installed is you're going to want to have some sort of way to edit your code. And for this example, I'm going to use Visual Studio Code. I'll have a link to it in the description. Basically, it's just a place where you can edit all your files. Also, you're gonna have to install Node.js, which will allow you to have server-side functions and allow you to install some of the packages that we'll be using for our website. And then also for this, of course, we're going to need our chat builder, which is going to be, in my case, GPT-4. You can use GPT-3 for this. I found that some of the code isn't that great that comes out of ChatGPT 3.5. So I do recommend using ChatGPT-4 as you will get much better results when you're prompting it with different components for your website. But yeah, with that being said, let's get started. So the way we're going to build this site is using two services, React and also Vercel. React is going to be the main framework to build this website, and Vercel is going to be the platform that will host our website on. We'll start off by saying, make me a simple React website tutorial. So, and then we'll let ChatGPT do its thing. So as you can see here, it tells you to install Node.js, like I mentioned. Then it also says to create a new React app using this code. And then it goes into creating the components. So we'll start off on step 2 here. We'll use the term npx create React app and then my simple website. So we'll use that for this example. So we'll make a new terminal here, and then in a completely new folder, you just go file, open folder, and pick a brand new folder. You want to paste in that code there and just hit enter and let it do its thing. If you get any errors after you run this code, literally just copy the error that's in the terminal and paste it into ChatGPT, and it will usually give you at least some methods of troubleshooting to better help you fix whatever error you're dealing with. Once you do this process a couple times, it becomes really easy to overcome errors, and there's really nothing you can't build with code. It honestly makes the process a lot more fun and intuitive because you don't have to worry about all the specifics of the code. You can just think of something and build it instantly. It's basically the way I've been learning how to build websites, and it's really fun and really fast. Once we have our website done downloading, we'll get this prompt here that says happy hacking. And what I'll do for simplicity's sake is I'll actually go file and I'll open up that folder where we just installed it. This just makes it look a lot cleaner in my opinion. You could use the command instead here called cd my simple website, and that would actually move your directory into that folder. But like I said, for this case, I'm just going to move the entire folder here. So now that we have our website, we can basically run it right now. So we go to terminal, new terminal, and then just follow the instructions. It says npm start. So we'll go here and we'll type in npm start and we'll see what it comes up with. Here we have our simple React site built in basically 2 seconds. There's nothing fancy about this right now, but what we will do is we'll make it better over time by asking ChatGPT to build us custom components for our site. So we'll go back here. For this instance, what we're going to do is I'm actually not going to follow these instructions, but instead give you an alternative method that will allow you to build websites kind of in like Lego blocks, which will allow you to customize exactly the element you want without having to edit the whole page at one time. Because if you haven't already noticed, ChatGPT isn't good at spitting out lots of information. Like, this is a lot of information, but for our purposes, we'll need it to spit out a lot more information if we want to get some bigger blocks of code to put on our website. So for the structure of our website and how most websites will be built, the app.js file is basically the file that will run your entire website and will have every single block of code for your website. And then you'll have a folder with different parts that will hold those blocks of code so you can easily customize the different parts of your website. So now that we have our simple React site, I'll right click on SRC and I'll create new folder, and we'll name this components. So what this will do is this will hold all of our different components for our React site. And then we'll come back into ChatGPT and we'll say, can you write me a simple Navbar component for my React site? Use separate HTML and CSS files. So this prompt will give us two different files. It'll give us Navbar.js and also Navbar CSS. Navbar.js is basically the guts of the functionality of that bar. And Navbar CSS will basically give us the style elements of how that bar should look. And the reason why we have it in two different files is because if we ever want to edit either of these files, we can just paste the file back into ChatGPT and then tell it, modify the file based on these specifications. It'll spit back that file. That's why we specified to use separate HTML files, because sometimes it will actually give you one big file. It's harder to edit that file when it's just one giant file of all the code. So we have a simple navbar here. So we'll click on copy. We'll go back in here and we'll go to components and we'll create a new file and we'll name this navbar.js and we'll paste it in there. And then we'll also navbar.css and we'll come back in here and we will copy it. So we'll copy it in here. So now we have our navbar components. So it's very simple right here. But now what we're going to want to do is come back in here and you'll notice at the very end of this example, it actually tells us that we need to input the navbar component into our app.js code. So as I mentioned before, if we go into our app.js, you'll notice that there's a bunch of code in here. But what we're actually going to do is delete all of this code, as well as you can see how this logo import right here is grayed out. We can also delete that too because it's no longer being used in the code here. So now we just have a very simple React app. If I were to hit Control S, which saves the file, you're gonna wanna do this every time you edit a file because then it will update the React app with your new styles. If we go back into our app, you can see it's now just a completely blank white page. So we'll go back into our code editor and then we'll follow what ChatGPT says for us to do. So it has the function app, which is similar to this right here. And then it has a return. Basically the structure of this file is the function of the app with all of our different functions and then the return with this HTML. If you don't know what HTML is, it's basically the building blocks that allow you to put different boxes on your site. To be able to structure and lay out different things. And it's telling us we have the class name app, which is similar to this right here, plus the navbar and header, which we just deleted this part, but it tells us to add this navbar in right here. So what we'll do is we'll come back in here and we'll hit enter. We'll do one of you and then type in navbar. And as you can see, I don't even have to type in the full thing, but it comes up as /components and navbar. Click on enter. You can see that it imports the import for the navbar right there. And then I can just finish it off with a slash and then with the closing sign. So now we have the navbar component installed in our app.js. Click on Control Save. You can see it successfully saves. And then let's go back into our React app. And there we go. I'll zoom in a little bit, but now we have our My Simple website, home about contact. This is where things get really fun. So what we can do is we can say, all right, cool. Rewrite the Navbar.js and CSS to make the background red and add 2 more menu options to the navbar list. Let's just see what it gives us. So it says certainly, makes it red, and then gives us the new JS code as well as the new CSS code. So if we look at our code, we'll actually see compared to the original one, it gives us a home, about, and contact. And in this one, it actually adds a services and portfolio bar. You honestly don't even really need to know what this means as long as you can kind of understand the concept that this kind of matches up to this right here. If I were to add another one, then it would also make the same thing. That's how you can kind of get to learn and understand how these websites are built so you can modify the code that ChatGPT makes to really get what you want. Then we go to the CSS over here, and what I really love about this whole process is it actually tells you what it updates with notes. So you can see in the .navbar, it adjusts the background color to red, and it also adds the color white to the Namebar brand. So if we go back into Navbar.js and Navbar CSS, we can hit Control A and then Control V. And what this will do is it will completely change the entire styles of our Navbar. And then we'll also copy on the navbar here and go back into the JS and do the same thing. And then if we take a look at our new React website, there we go. It's now in red, and there's also the My Simple website. Very, very cool. Okay, so now what if we want to actually change this color because it doesn't look that good, and also add a logo to the top of our website? What I'll actually use is the similar assets for my site, including this logo image I have for my company, Horizon Labs AI. You can see in our main directory here, I've imported the logo.png, literally the same file I just mentioned. We're gonna put that actually in our header and make the background the dark blue, like the website that I currently have. Maybe even make it a different color and hopefully make it a little bit better. So to start, we'll go into SRC and we're gonna make a new folder, and we're gonna call this one Assets. So this folder is gonna store all of our videos, pictures, graphics, all kinds of things we want to input on our site that isn't anything code related. So I have this logo PNG here, and I'm just going to drag it and move it into my assets folder. So now I have my components folder with my navbar, as well as my assets folder with my logo PNG. Great. So now we'll go back into ChatGPT and we'll come down here and we'll say, can you make the navbar color dark blue, and then add a logo to the left side of the header My Simple website. So just a very simple prompt explaining what we want ChatGPT to modify for our website. So you can see here, it goes to the navbar and it adds the dark blue. You can see also here, it centers the items, sets the logo width and the logo height, then also edits the code to add in the logo to our JavaScript. And also I want to mention, you have to be pretty careful about what it gives you, just so you're not copying and pasting code right after you put in a prompt. Because you see here, it says rest of CSS, which means it only did a portion of the CSS that we actually want. So we'll copy this section of the CSS and we'll come back here and go into navbar CSS. And then you can see it goes navbar brand, so navbar brand, navbar logo. So it wants us to change these three. So we'll highlight them and then Control V, Control S to save. So now we have our new styles, and then we need to replace our JavaScript in here to match up with the styles. So we'll come in here, Control A, Control V, and then we'll import the new logo. All right, so we ran into our first error. Error can't resolve logo.png in components. So let's just say, for instance, I have no clue what's wrong, like what's happening. Literally just copy the code, go back into ChatGPT, and then paste the code, and then just see what it gives you. So it says, it looks like the error is occurring because the application is trying to import a logo image from a path that doesn't exist in your project. Okay, so let's check things out. So we go back, we can see it added this portion right here where it adds the image. And we can see it says SRC equals logo. SRC actually stands for the source is the logo. And if you can see, as I highlight the logo actually is this same logo, which is being imported. And then if we take a look, the import is from /logo.png. So what it's doing is it's looking for the logo in this path. One thing to mention is when you're trying to look for images and stuff in your website, 2 dots is for it to go back a folder, 1 dot is to stay in the same folder. So if we are in currently navbar.js in the components folder, what it's saying is go back into the SRC folder. And then in the SRC folder, look for logo PNG. As you see here, there is no logo PNG. It's actually located in the assets folder. So we'll come in here and type in assets and then click save, and you can see it compiles successfully. So we can come back into our website and check it out. We have our My Simple website with the logo and our nav bars. Very, very cool. Let's change things up just a little bit. We'll change this text here. We can kind of see from our components, our navbar.js, that this My Simple website text here is actually the same as this here. So what we can do is we can change it to Horizon Labs AI, and then Control Save, and we can see that it changes it here. Let's get a little bit fancy. What if we want to actually change the font for our header? We want these to be a different font so it looks more custom and unique. Well, we can literally go into ChatGPT and say, can you change the navbar style to change the font to Poppins? I'm personally a big fan of the Poppins font, and I'm pretty sure that's the same font that I used on my original website. Okay, we're back. You can see ChatGPT gave us some steps to change our font. So let's just follow the instructions that ChatGPT gave us and see what comes up. So in the public/index.html, we can click on this and we can go over to our website here and we can go to public right here. And you can see there's an index.html. And then where does it say to add the tag script? Inside the head tags. Gotcha. So in the head right here, you can see there's also some other links here for some stuff. I'm just going to use the second one here and put that in and click save. And then we'll come over to our Navbar CSS. It is changed here. So we'll copy this and we'll go to our components, Navbar CSS, and then we'll swap this out for that. And then you can see here, it'll actually change the font family to Poppins. And it adds a little comment here that it changed to Poppins. Let's see if it worked. It did. Yeah, you can see that the text is actually changed to Poppins font. Cool. So now what if I want the Horizon Labs AI to be bold? Well, we can do the same thing. We can go into ChatGPT and say, can you make the My Simple Website text bold? The reason why I said My Simple Website is because the chatbot actually only knows of My Simple Website from the last response, but it'll be the same way because this is modifying the CSS and not the JS, or it's only modifying the styles, not the actual functionality of the page. So you can see it wants me to change Navbar brand. So I'll change that to this and it will make the font weight bold. And there we go. It changes this to bold. Right now, it's kind of all on the corners of the website. What I want to change this to is actually put this all a little bit more shrunk down so that there's more room on the sides to actually make it look like it's more cohesive in the center. So we've gotten pretty far already with our code right now. But what I love to do is I will actually hit Control A, copy all this code, start a new chat, go into ChatGPT 4, paste the code, go back, go into Navbar.js, copy the code, Control C, go back, and Control V to paste the code. So now we have the styles and the React in the code, and then we'll say rewrite the CSS and JS to make the content only appear 80% of the width in the center. And then we'll see what it gives us. So it says sure, and then it rewrites the CSS. You can see here, it gives us some comments. It sets the width of the container to 80%. Okay, so we have our new CSS. We can copy that, Control A, Control V, hit Control C or Control S, and then go into the JS component, copy that, go back here, and I think that is, for the most part, all the same, except for it added a tag there, it looks like. Okay. We'll go back here and then there we go. Look at that. It moved it all into the center. All right, cool. I think this is a good start for our Navbar. Now let's get on to the hero section. I have this image here that I used on a previous website design for the website. I really didn't like this, but I'm going to use it for this example purposes. So we'll go into here. And actually, what I think I can do is I can actually drag this file into my assets component. And there we go. It actually showed up as hero image. So now I have the logo PNG and also the hero image in my assets container. So we'll go into ChatGPT and then we'll start a new chat, ChatGPT 4, and we'll say, write a React component hero section with text about my website and 2 buttons on the left and a image, hero image.png on the right. And then we'll click enter and then we'll see what it gives us. In the meantime, let's come back over to VS Code and then let's create new files for hero.js and hero.css. So we're doing basically the same thing as we did before with our Navbar component, but instead we're kind of describing the different components we want for the different parts of our website. So we come back over here and we can see that it's coming along. We have a kind of a hero section here as well as some information here. So we'll copy the JavaScript and then we'll come over and then we'll go into JavaScript, paste Control S, as well as the hero section styles. Control S, there we go. So, and if you caught this, what we actually need to change is, you can see here that it says import hero section.css, include this line if you're using a separate CSS file. For this, I'm actually using the title hero.js and hero.css. So I'm going to change this to hero. Also, what I'm going to change about this is, instead of making this hero section, I'm just going to name it hero. And I'm going to do the same for this down here. So now our component is named hero. This line right here is exporting the entire component. So that contains all of this code, which returns this HTML information, which is our website, and also includes this style sheet, which is this information right here. So in this way, it kind of separates all the information so you can work on it a lot easier. Then we head into app.js, and then we do the same thing. Type in hero, and you can see it already brings up the components.hero. We'll click enter, and it already adds it to the top. And then we just got to finish off the last of the information there, and there we go. Let's check out our website and see what it's come up with. This honestly looks like crap. We're gonna talk to ChatGPT to actually style this to make this better. First thing we notice is that this image actually did not show up. Let's ask ChatGPT why the image didn't show up. Why did the image not show on the website? Okay, so it gave me some ideas here. Let's go through them and make sure they're correct. So let's check the file path. So we'll go over here and we see that in the assets, it is correct hero-image PNG. Let's come into our hero.js, hero image.png. Okay, that looks correct. I actually noticed that there isn't an import statement for the hero image. If we go into our header.js, there's actually an import logo from the logo directory. So there isn't one for this image, so we'll tell it to add one. So can you add a import statement for the image in ... assets. So it says certainly, and then it adds the hero image from hero assets for importing the image, and it rewrites the text here. So we'll copy the import statement. We'll go back into our code here, and then we'll paste that in there, and then we'll come back into here, and you can see it also adds another note for using the imported image, which is right here. So we'll take this div, and then we'll move back into here, and we'll paste that div right into here. And then we'll do this. We'll delete the notes to make it look a little bit cleaner, and save. And then let's head back into our thing, and there we go. We have our image. Cool, but this image is taking up a lot of the space here. Let's go back into here, and actually, because we've changed so much stuff on our own here, like the hero section and the CSS, let's create a new chat, come into here, copy the JavaScript, paste the JavaScript, do the same thing for the styles, and then let's say, can you edit this so the entire component only takes up 80% of the width. So what it will do is it'll rewrite the code with the specifications that I mentioned. So as it's writing, you can kind of understand what it's doing to build the different sections of your website. You can see there's a hero section with hero text. If we go back to the hero, it looks like all about the same here. But we can go into the styles, and we can see here that it added notes to change the width and the margin. So we'll copy the new CSS, we'll come back in here, and then we'll paste the new styles in there and hit Control S and then see what it comes up with. So this still does not look right. You can see that the image, as I highlight over it, doesn't take up that much room, and then there's all kinds of space right here. Okay, so we'll say, can you make the image, can you make the header and buttons and the image on the right each take up 50% of the page width. So we just asked it to make the page width for both of the different sections 50%. So it keeps the same thing here, sets that to 50%. Also sets the hero image to 50%. So let's try this new styles. So we'll come back in here, Control V, Control S, and let's see what it comes up with. There we go. It's something a little bit better that we can actually use. All right, so I actually want to make this image a little bit smaller. So what we can do here is we can go, can you make the image smaller while keeping the 50% width? Make the image 80%. Let's just say that. Let's just say that. You can maintain a 50% width for the hero image, but control the size of an image within that div. Okay, so that's what we want. What this is basically explaining is we go into here, we go into JS, you can see that this div here, which contains the hero image, is actually being modified instead of the entire thing. And if you haven't figured this out already, basically what the structure of the HTML looks like is we have this portion here, which is, or let me backtrack. We have the imports here, which is all the assets that we're importing. Right now it's very simple with just an image, the style sheet, and then React, which is the framework we're using. And then this is the function right here. This bracket with that bracket right there is the main function, and that returns this code. And this, if you were to paste this directly into a website, this would show up as like a website. But there's also these class names here, and these class names are basically identifiers for the styles. So you can see class name here, hero-section. If we go into hero CSS, there's hero-section. Same thing with the rest of them. If we type in hero-text, there's hero-text. Hero buttons, we have styles for hero buttons, as well as hero buttons button, which specifies the button portion of the hero button container, as well as hero image and the hero. So there's all different kinds of things here. But let's go back, and it gave us new styles. So we'll copy these styles, and then we'll come into hero CSS, Control A, Control V, and Control S, and then go back to our website and then see what it comes up with. It made the image a little bit smaller, but I actually want this to be maybe a hair smaller. So you can see it changed the image width to 80%. Let's come back in here and let's change this to 60%. And let's go back and see our website. That's maybe a little too small. Let's raise it. Let's bump it up again to 70%. Okay, cool. Very nice. I'm liking it so far, but what I want it to do is I actually want all this stuff to be on the left side, kind of similar to how my website is right now. You can see that all of this stuff is on the left side. So what we can do is we want to tell ChatGPT, can you modify the left side to make the header text and to make the text and the buttons all align left. So hopefully this will edit the JS and the CSS, maybe just the CSS, to make all of the elements in that section all to the left. So you can see here, it takes the hero text, which is similar to this hero text here, which is this hero text here, which is this div to this div, which includes this H1, this P, and this div here, which is the buttons that also includes this button and this button. And we can see that it changed text align left. So we come back in here and we'll just copy the styles, come back, Control A, Control V, and S, and come back. And now it's all on the left. Very, very cool. All right, so let's do some more styling tactics. We'll say, change the font of all the text to Poppins. I already have it located in my index.html. So with this prompt, we're saying change the font to all text to Poppins, but I'm letting it know I also already have it located in my index.html. And hopefully what this will do is it'll recognize that the font is already installed, and then it will go ahead and take the similar code that we used in the navbar and put that in the same code here for our website. So you can see it sets the font family to Poppins. And then just for time's sake, I literally know that this is all it's going to change. So you can select that, copy it, come back to your code, go into hero section, and then paste in the new one here, Control S, and there we go. It changed the code here, but I don't think it actually changed the code for the buttons, interestingly enough. So what we can do is we'll come back here and then, yeah, it doesn't look like it changed anything for the buttons. So we'll actually say this. Can you edit the style of the buttons to make one dark blue and one gray? and also round the corners. So what we'll do with this one is we'll edit the style of the buttons to make one dark blue and one gray. And it says, certainly you can easily differentiate the two buttons by styling them separately. Here's the updated CSS to make one dark blue and the other gray with rounding the corners. Okay, so now it gives the style for the button first child as well as the hero buttons button last child. It gives the different color backgrounds. Color white. Okay, so let's just see what happens. We'll go back into our styles here, Control A, Control V, and back into the website. There we go. We can see it change the different colors of the buttons. But I can notice that the text here isn't actually the Poppins font here. So we'll say, can you edit this to make the text on the buttons also have Poppins font? Should already use the font. However, some browsers apply their own style to forms, yada, 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 whatever. Okay, so it applies the font there, and then, okay, you can see that applies Poppins font to buttons explicitly. Okay, let's try this now. So let's copy that. Let's go back into our code and hero buttons, button Poppins font family, and check back. There we go. It actually changed the font to be Poppins font. So very, very cool. And then for stylistic sake, what I want to do is I actually want to change the corners here. You can see how the buttons are now rounded. Let's make these buttons a little bit more rounded to make them more of like a pill shape. So you can see in the hero.js, there's actually hero-buttons here, this class name, which defines these two buttons. This hero-buttons is linked to the same CSS file in hero.buttons, but we're actually talking in this specific case about the button itself, not just the hero class, because this right here identifies the entire div, including the two buttons. This style right here actually tells what those buttons should look like. So we have different properties here. We have margin right, padding border, cursor, border radius. This is for the rounded corners. So let's delete that, and then we'll actually turn this into 15, for instance. Let's just see what it looks like. Okay, they're honestly pretty good. You could change this to however you like, but for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just gonna keep it like that. Okay, and now let's go back in here. So let's add a couple more features. Let's say when you hover over these buttons, you want them to kind of pop out at you. So we can do the same thing. So we can say, can you edit the code, this code, to make the buttons grow on hover? And then we just see what it gives us. A lot of this process is just typing things in and seeing what it gives you until you can kind of trial and error your way through getting exactly what you want. Yeah, it takes some time, but it's just an iterative process. It's kind of slow. Like honestly, the big bottleneck with this is how fast this stuff can generate. Because then you can just constantly talk to it to really talk into how you want your website to be designed. And you can see it gives us a whole new style section here. Have to note though that it did revert back to the 5 pixels here because I changed it and didn't reflect that in the chatbot. So we'll come back here, paste it in Control S, but I'm also going to change this to 15 here again, just for stylistic sake. We'll come back in here and now we have our new website. Let's see, the buttons grow. There you have it. So now whenever you hover over the buttons, you can make them do whatever you want. So what we can do is now let's go and create our next section called About. So we'll head back into our Components tab and we'll click on New File and we'll create a component called About.js as well as about.css. Perfect. So we'll click on New Tab, ChatGPT 4. We'll say, can you make an About Us component for React? Have a header called About Us and then some generic text explaining our company. We'll say make the entire thing take up 60% of the page width, and we'll say make it called about.js and about.css, comma, about. and click enter. So we can see here that it gives us a new CSS as well as an about section here. So we'll copy this over. We'll go into our thing here, into our about, we'll go into our about.js, that control S, and our container CSS, that boom, boom, S. Okay, so now we have our two new sections. We'll go in our app.js, and as same thing we did before, we'll come over this, type in about, we'll not finish it, click enter, it automatically puts the import into the page, and then finish off the tag here, and then save that again. And let's see what our website looks like. So we have a nice little about us section here. Very, very fun. I like this. So what we'll do again is we'll actually change this. Can you make this have Poppins font? It goes through and tries to add the link in the style sheet again, which we already have done. I could have specified that in the prompt, but I was lazy. It's going to reprint the entire text with the new Poppins font. So now we'll come here and we'll go to components, about CSS, and we'll paste that back in there, and it changed the font. Very, very nice. So now we have our little about section here. We have our welcome to my website. So now let's do a services tab here. A new chat, and we'll type in, can you make me a services React component that has 4 services listed in squares in a row with a header that says services. So you can see here, it's literally just printing us some very basic service template description stuff that we can use. All right, so we'll go back into our code and we'll create another component called services.css as well as services.js. So we'll come into here, we have services.js right here, control S, control C, and then we'll do the same thing for this one, and bada bing, bada boom, there we go. So now we'll go back into our app.js and we'll do the same thing, services, and control S, and there we go. Let's see what it comes up with. Okay, this is not that good. We should add more space between the about us and the services to make it look better. Obviously make these tighter. We should use kind of a gray background similar to maybe this color to keep it consistent. And maybe we want to add some more text onto them. So we'll come into here and then we'll say, can you make the width 80% and make the boxes have a gray background with rounded corners. You can see here, it's rewriting the CSS for us, centering the row, background color, it changes the background color to gray. It also rounds the corners for us. So let's paste this back in and see what it gives us. Okay, this is a little bit better. Let's say make the squares closer together, 30px gap, and move the black border line. We're gonna make these squares closer together, and then there's also this black line around them that I really do not like. Hopefully it'll make it a little bit more compact. And remove the black. Okay, let's just see what it gives us. So, oh, I think it changed there. Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so it did do that. Cool. So now we have our new services. Although if we modify it, I don't think, yeah, it's not changing the gap between them. So this is where it's time to troubleshoot. So it set the gap for 30. The squares are still far apart. Why are they not closer together? Let's see what it says. Apologies for the confusion. The justified content space is probably causing the squares to be just a full length of the row, leading to a larger gap if the content does not fill the entire row. Okay, so it identified what was wrong with it, and now hopefully it's going to change it to fit our specifications. Remove the margin. Okay, so it gave us some code here. Let's just see what it comes up with. Okay. Okay, so this is interesting. It actually made the gaps exactly what we want, 30 pixels wide, but it's not in the center. So let's say the squares are not centered. Can you fix this and remove the margin on the last child? Just make everything centered. Okay, so I'll explain this one. This is something that kind of comes with time. When you look at this, you have the services container, which makes sense. This is basically the main container, the basic styles for what it will look like, as well as the service is a row. So that's just how the entire row box will be laid out, as well as the style for the square. But this last one for last child is really interesting because it's removing the margin from the last square, but like, I don't think there's any margin that needs to be on there to begin with. So hopefully that it changed that, and then it made the correct assumption that it is not needed. And there we go. Okay, so now it made it a little bit better. So now it actually put the stuff in the middle. That was kind of weird. But that's just something you have to play around with when you're using these kinds of services. So we'll do the last thing again. We'll say, can you make the text for this entire component Poppins? It's already linked in my public HTML. And you can see font family Poppins. Take that. Let's go back in here and we'll add that to our container, and we'll see, there we are. So now we have our services component. So now let's work on our portfolio component. So for this one, what we'll do is we will have a portfolio label with some text and information, and then a picture on the right. So we'll go back into here, and then we'll go to components, and then we'll make a portfolio.css and portfolio.js. Okay, cool. So now we'll make a new chat, and then we'll call it write me a React component called portfolio that is 80% wide with a header and text on the left taking up 50%, and then an image on the right taking up 50%. So now you can see with that prompt, it actually put everything in one file here. You can see it's styled inside the divs, which this is not what I want at all. So we'll say, can you separate the styles and the JS? Now, like I mentioned before, when you do this, you have all of the styles actually inside of the JavaScript, which isn't bad if you don't have a lot of styles. But when you start to make really complex components for your website, the styles can get really out of hand. And in my experience, it's better to have two different sheets of them, so you can just paste the entire style sheet in there and say, change the styles so that it looks this way, as opposed to having to put in a giant block of text, including all your functions, including all your HTML, and then it overloads the system, and it doesn't really know what to do. You can click on the JavaScript, and then let's go back in here. Let's paste the JavaScript, and let's paste the new CSS. There we go, and let's check out the new website. I literally forgot we have to go into app.js and import our portfolio as before. So there we go. We have our new portfolio site, and there we go. So you can see here, the image also doesn't show up again. So for this case, what we'll use is we'll use this stock photo for our site of people having a better time than I am right now for our portfolio page. But this can honestly be any image you want, and can be styled any way you also would like. We will come back in here. So we'll say the image is called fun.jpg in the /assets folder. Can you also import it? Okay, so now it's going to rewrite the JavaScript code to import the fun image from assets_fun.jpg and also import that image into our JavaScript. Go to our JavaScript, into our portfolio.js, and then click on new, and then let's see. So now it imports the image, but you can see that this doesn't really look that good. And what I'm going to edit now is what I kind of want is I really want there to be 100 pixels worth of space between the services, because this is kind of close, as well as 100 more pixels of space between the About Us and the services as well. So let's go here and let's actually change something a little bit. So once you start working with websites more and more and you really understand how they work, you can easily edit them to do exactly what you want. So we can go in here, and then as I mentioned before, this About container holds the entire text that we have. So we'll just go into our About container and we'll use the property margin, and margin actually adds to the div and padding subtracts to the div. So if you have text in a square, for instance, if you want the square to expand, you add margin. If you want the text inside to shrink, you add padding. So we'll add margin, and we'll do margin bottom specifically, and we'll just do 100 px for 100 pixels. And we'll come back and we'll see that it made the changes, and we'll do the same thing for services. So let's go in here, and then we'll go to services CSS, same thing, services container. Let's add margin bottom 100 px, Control S, and let's come back, and then you can see it added more spacing to our website. Very, very cool. So now what we want to do is let's actually make this look a little bit better. What we'll do is we'll actually center this text so it's in the middle. We'll make a little gap here, and then we'll also round this text so it looks a little bit better. Let's go back here, and then we'll say, can you make the text in the center vertically, and also make a, we'll say 60 px gap between the left and right, and also round the corners of the image. Something seems to have gone wrong. Very fun. Regenerate, and it's not working. That is cool. So when this happens, because when you use a service, it happens a lot, let's just literally copy it and then go into a chatbot. So we'll copy our prompt, come back in here, services. Oh no, we want portfolio. So we'll copy our portfolio, and we'll just paste the JavaScript literally in here. And there we go. You've got to be kidding me. Time for Chrome. We're going Chrome, baby. I don't know why, but it was being kind of buggy. I repasted it into Chrome, and now it seems to be working. So yeah, just stuff you have to deal with when you're using this service. But honestly, if you were to tell me that I was building websites like this in under an hour, and I didn't really have to think about what I was doing, that's pretty crazy. And you can kind of see where this is going. The way we're building this website is very, very small and just adding details after details until you can kind of get exactly what you want. And I like this method a lot because it really lets you customize exactly what you want on your website, literally down to the pixel. Which there's a lot of website builders that you can do the same thing with, but this, in my opinion, just allows so much more flexibility in what you can do and what you can learn. And when you really understand the process of how to build websites like this, it unlocks so much potential in basically creating whatever you want on the internet. So we'll go back in here, and we'll use the new style that is in this one, and we'll paste it into our portfolio style. Okay. So we'll go back in here, and you can see it rounds the corners and centers the text. Very, very nice. We'll go back in here, and we'll add our portfolio container. We'll actually add a margin bottom, again, of 100 px to our container. And then there we go. There's a little bit of padding on the bottom for that. Okay, nice. So let's do the last one, and let's add the contact information on the bottom. So we'll have ChatGPT. We'll say, write me a React component that is only, let's just say 500 px wide in the center, called contact, that says, let's get in touch with an input for a name, email, and message with a submit button. Also, while we're at it, let's change this text to also be Poppins. Let's go into here. Let's take services CSS, and let's add the family font here in the container to also this container right here. And then let's see that change the font. Very, very fun. So let's continue. So we have So you can see here, it actually adds a use state handle change, also puts the styles. Yeah, so you can see here again, it puts the styles in the div again. Let's say rewrite this, but make the JS and CSS separate. Okay, so now it's going to separate these two. So the contact information and the style information are in two separate files, which just makes it so much easier, because as you can see here, we have all this text here for our functions for our contact information. Okay, yeah. So we have our contact.js here. We'll come back and we'll make our new component, contact.js, paste that in there, and then as well as our contact.css, and then paste that in there like so. And then we'll go into our app.js, and then we'll also add this into our websites. Bada bing, bada boom. There we go. Let's go down here, and there we go. Let's get in touch. So what we want to do with this is actually something, I don't like how it takes up the entire width of this page. So let's make the submit button as large as the input, or as wide as the input settings. Let's just start with that, and let's comb through the CSS. Okay, so in this one, I actually don't want this. In contact container, it says there's the display and the justify content, all that, but the height, this height right here, 100 view height, this is actually controlling how big this information is right here. What I'll do in this case is I'll actually remove that after I get the new styles here. So let's go back here. Let's go into our contact CSS, remake that. And let's actually delete this because I don't want that. And I know that's going to give me this. So there we go. What we can do now, let's actually put this information inside of the input boxes. We'll copy this code. We'll make a new ChatGPT window, and then we'll say all this, and we'll say, can you edit this to put the labels for each input as placement holder text for the input. Make the box light, make the input light gray. So now hopefully what that will do is that will put the labels inside the boxes and make them light gray. I think what I want to do for this example at least is do that and then make everything pop-ins, and I think it honestly should be looking good for a basic template website. It's not supposed to be anything mind-blowing. It's really supposed to be just about getting your feet wet when it comes to making websites with AI. So let's go back in here and hopefully, okay, placehold feed. Okay, so now let's check out this. So let's go into contact CSS and let's see. Okay, so that was only the CS, so let's change the JS here. Okay, that definitely made some changes, so we'll come back, and there we go. We see that it put the information inside of there. But I don't know why it keeps doing this thing where it takes up the entire space. I personally don't really like that. So let's change this view height to not be that. Okay, yeah, but then let's also add a margin on the bottom here to make this look a little bit better, just to give it some more height. There we go. Yeah. And then also, as we noted before, once you kind of get the hang of this, I want to take this font family pop-ins and then input that into our contact CSS into our container. So let's just put that in there. Let's see what that changes. So that changed that information. Let's just kind of do some guesswork to input area button. Let's see if we can change that also. There we go. Now that is all in Poppins font. You can go through and you can edit this as much as you like to get it looking exactly the way you want. Perfect. So now what we'll do for the last part is we'll make these buttons actually connect to our different portions of our site. So we'll have ChatGPT help with this as well. If we go into our Navbar JS, So you can see that it adds, if we go into our website, you can see at the top here, when we click on about, it actually goes to the hashtag about section. That's what it adds to the link. If we go here, we can see the href is the this home. So when you click on this, it adds this to the end of the URL. So let's do this. Let's have this. So we'll take our navbar information and then we'll go into our ChatGPT and then we'll paste it in there, and then we'll go back into about.js and then we'll click on that, and then we'll paste that in there, and then we'll say, how can I make this so when the about button is clicked in the nav bar, it smoothly takes the person to the about section. So we can see that it says by using scroll into view react method, using use ref and use hooks. Okay, so let's update the about component. Gotcha. So it's updating the about component with looks like some stuff here and then the rest of the code. Windows scroll to about. Let's actually, okay, I honestly don't know what to change here. So what I love doing is I literally just say, rewrite the entire completed code for both the about and the navbar. Okay. And as I mentioned before, the reason why we only put the JavaScript in here is because the JavaScript is what handles the actual functionality of the website. The style sheets are only for managing the look of the elements on the web page. You really only have to put the JavaScript in here to have it modify itself to make it work. But then hopefully it will rewrite the navbar here. So we have a brand new navbar. We'll swap that out to do that. And then we'll do, oh, and then it gave us the new about section. So we'll come back here and the about.js, and then it gives us the new function. Let's go back into here just to be safe. We'll refresh. If I go to about, it scrolls us to about. There we go. And then so now if I want this to work, so let's go back here, and then for services.js, we'll click on this. So we'll say, if I want this to work for my services section, here is the JS. How can I edit the navbar and the services section? Rewrite the entire JS for both. We'll follow a similar pattern as the about section and use the services, the use effect to, okay, so there we go. So, and now it will completely rewrite our services.js for us, and hopefully do the same thing as the about section, and then we'll make sure this works as well. We'll copy our services.js here, and then there we go, and then we have our navbar, so we'll copy that over as well, and we'll paste that in there. And this is interesting because it looks like the same code twice, but handling about click, handling services click. Okay, so you can see these two are different, which handles these two here. Okay, so it's a little bit different, but if I were to restart this and go to services, it would take us to services. Same thing with about. Okay, there we go. All right, so that's at least working a little bit. So yeah, that's basically it for getting the top part functionality to work. You pretty much get the gist of it. You can do the same thing for the other two sections, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to do it in this video. You can also notice that it did change the styles of the buttons when I reposted so that's a bit weird there, but you can play around with the chatbot and get it looking exactly the way you want. The only thing I will add though is I do want to show you what we can do also is we can get really fancy with this and go to the hero section. We'll make a new chatbot window, and then we'll paste in our hero CSS and hero JS, and then we say, can you make the left side section with the words, actually first of all let's just say, can you fix the buttons to make them only 100px wide with a 15px gap? I don't know why the buttons are being weird, but Let's do this to set the buttons to a specific size. And then what we can do is we'll actually edit it to add a transition. Okay, so it adds a gap to the buttons. It adds the width to the buttons. Okay, so there's the new CSS. Let's go back in here. Check that out. Okay, so it adds that there. So what we'll say is, can you make it so the hero text smoothly fades in from the left and the hero image smoothly fades in from the right? And you can kind of see where this is going. You can basically do this for any component you want on your website and make it do any kind of style you really want. Because at the end of the day, it's all just about trial and erroring, putting in the chatbot what you want until you can get exactly what you want out of it. And then over time, as you do this over and over again, you kind of get to look at the gist of what's going on here, and you can really start to identify, okay, so like this right here is new, and that looks like, okay, keyframes fade in left, goes from 0 to 100%, opacity 0 being nothing, 1 meaning fully non-transparent, and as well as this other one here for fading into the right. So we'll say rewrite the entire completed CSS. So there's a lot of stuff here that's missing. What I'm going to do is just have it rewrite the entire thing for me so I don't have to worry about moving everything around. I don't like that it does that, but hopefully in future versions, it just actually prints the whole thing exactly the way you want pretty fast. But it is, like, at the end of the day, pretty rudimentary coding. It's just making it a lot easier and a lot more intuitive, typing in what you want, looking at the code that it gives you, and then playing with that. Because I personally think it's really hard to start from a blank canvas and just kind of go from there and start typing things in. But when you have stuff like this to really help you get started with your website, it can make it a lot easier. So there we go. You can see that when you load into the website, stuff fades in from the left. And you can do that for pretty much anything you want. So to make it like when you get down to here, stuff fades in from the top, you get the idea. It's just about how far do you want to take it to make your website looking as nice as possible. And then the last thing that I want to cover before we end this tutorial is actually how you can get it to look good on mobile. So I know what you're probably thinking is that it probably looks good on a desktop version like this. Very simple, but what happens if you get to mobile? Like, is it going to look like crap? And to that I say yes, it's probably going to look like crap. So what you want to do is we'll actually turn this into a expandable hamburger menu that you can use instead of this right here. So what you want to tell the chatbot is when it gets down to a certain pixel size, it actually turns the navbar menu into a hamburger. And then that can be clicked down to reveal the different elements in the navbar. So let's just give it a very simple prompt in here. We'll go to navbar and we'll copy in the JavaScript and the style sheets. And then we'll say, can you make it so when the window, so on mobile devices, the menu items turn into a hamburger menu, and then turn into a hamburger menu, and then the items appear below it when clicked. Basically, the idea is to basically put in the div or put in the HTML and the style sheet for the component that you're trying to edit, and then ask ChatGPT, how can you reformat this component to make it look nice on mobile? And the more you play around with it, you can say, okay, maybe on this certain size, it doesn't look as good, but on this size, it does. Can you make this certain size look more like this size? Or just kind of, ask it a bunch of times. How can you make this look nice on mobile? Like if you want maybe a different icon, or you want it to slide in from the left, if you want, for in this case, to be a hamburger menu, which you can see here, does it actually add a toggle menu will be hidden and a hamburger button will appear, the hamburger. Okay, so let's just see what it gives us now. So it looks like the hamburger menu does not appear. Hold on, I actually didn't even give the rest of the JS. Okay, yeah, it does input that in there. That is weird. We want that to be, okay, interesting. So if I were to inspect this on a smaller device, let's see here. What do we want it to say? We should probably ask it, can you move the hamburger menu to the right? And when it is clicked, the options appear under the hamburger icon and X button. Okay, let's see. Certainly updating the CSS, changing the HTML structure. Okay, so let's try this again. But yeah, as I mentioned before, you kind of get the idea. You basically just want to keep playing with this and asking it to do what you want until you can get the exact functionality you need for your specific application. And as you can see here, like this is just the navbar. Like the navigation bar here is pretty small. Like it's not anything too big, but like when there's a lot of functionality between these moving parts here, you can kind of see that it gets kind of big. And you don't, I mean, like, and this is, you know, including this style sheet here. So you have all these styles that were generated with ChatGPT, plus all this JavaScript that you have generated with ChatGPT. If these were in the same file and you pasted it in there, it would take a lot longer for it to reproduce the entire thing. When, like, in this case, you can have it individually either do the CSS or the JS to just make the generation that much quicker. But it gives a new JavaScript component. So we'll copy this over and we'll do that. So we have our new JavaScript and then as well as our finished CSS. So we'll come over here to CSS, paste that in, and let's see what it gives us. So there we go. On certain files over here, you can see that it actually turns it into a navbar menu. And you can come in here, you can click on it, and this honestly will just take some more time to play around with, but you can kind of see that it's covering up the image here, which we don't really want. That's something you have to play around with the more you work with this kind of style of editing. But yeah, you can basically program whatever you want as long as you just keep asking ChatGPT what you want, playing with the code, and really understanding how all the pieces work while building your knowledge on how to code in a very fun and intuitive way. It basically allows you to code just as you were typing into a box what you want, and then you can piece together a website basically any way you want. And then you can have people click around, do things, have them send them to external websites, anything you can imagine. You can ask the bot to basically implement for you. And if you can't do it, it'll usually either find a workaround, or you can say, you know, how do I do this, but do it in a different way, things like that, to really get the exact functionality that you want. So now, before I end this tutorial, what I want to show you is how you can instantly host this site for free on a domain. So you can build your site in a couple hours, have it really customized, do exactly what you want, and then be able to show friends and family exactly what you built. So what we'll do is we'll hit Control-C to end this, and what that will do is stop the server. And we'll go back into ChatGPT, and then we'll ask it. So we'll say, I have a finished React project. How can I host this on Vercel? So as I mentioned in the beginning of this tutorial, Vercel is actually the hosting platform that I use to host all of my simple HTML and JavaScript websites. It's very simple, very intuitive, and it really allows you to just build anything, put it out on the website for free, very automatic. It tells you can connect a GitHub repository, but honestly, I'm not that technically savvy with GitHub. I mean, I like it, but personally, I just don't really use it, and I don't really like editing stuff through GitHub. So I run this all locally. How can I install Vercel and deploy locally and not use GitHub? Yeah, we'll see what it gives us, because personally, I don't like using, like I said, I don't like using GitHub. I do like using the Vercel CLI. So for this one, you have to have Node.js. I guess you can put it on GitHub and not use Node.js, but you have to have Node.js anyway to install React. So like you have to already have it installed. And then you can just instantly have your Vercel information on it. Makes it a lot much easier to deploy. But basically, yeah, so we have our, once Node is installed, you can install Vercel by running the command. So we'll come back over here, we'll go and do our thing, and then we're in our terminal. We'll just click on that, Control-V to paste, and then it will install Vercel on our site for us. So it'll take a second. It'll basically load all the functionality it needs to take your information on your site and put it on the web. We'll come back over here, log into Vercel, we'll copy that command, we'll Control-V it into the terminal, and then we'll see, okay, so log into Vercel, we'll just use our email. So there we go. I connected my account. Now let's go, and we are in our project directory. We are already in our, as you can see here, our My Simple Website folder directory with all of the goodies inside of it. Very, very nice. And then now let's go to, we can deploy our site by typing in Vercel. So we'll type in Vercel and set up and deploy, enter. I'll use my account. I won't link to an existing project. I'll just keep my simple website name. Everything's located in this folder. It's setting up the website. Want to modify these settings, I'll hit no, and then hopefully it'll add the Vercel folder, which is basically just some information that allows it to connect with their hosting services. And then yeah, we should be able to wait a couple minutes, and there we go. Now, if we go into my Vercel login, you can see we have My Simple Website. There you have it. We click on the site, and there we go. We go to your My Simple Website -3.vercel-app, and we have our simple website here, exactly the way that you had it when you were developing on your local server. And yeah, you can basically send anyone this link and they can view anything you put on your site for pretty much free right from your computer in all under an hour if you really get after it. But what I'll also do is take this one step further, and we can go over to the domains tab. We can actually add another domain to get this connected to a custom domain. Honestly, you can get domains pretty cheap from any of your favorite domain hosting sites. You can get .com domains now for like less than 10 bucks. Honestly, I love buying just cool random domains or now and then, but I have one that I used to use that I don't use anymore that I'll use for the sake of this video on Namecheap. So I actually have this website or this domain called lunarlabsai.com, which used to be my old name for this company, but is now actually my new AI content company. But we will add this, and you can see that it has invalid configuration. So what we'll do is I'll come over to my advanced DNS here. So I'm in my Namecheap account on my domain settings for my domain. So in the advanced DNS section, this will look different for each of the other domain service providers. But we basically just want to copy the exact same settings here. So @ and then 76762121. So we'll do that @ and then a record, and then I'll set this to automatic connect. There we go. If we refresh this, okay, yeah. So then we have our a record. And then what it wants us to do is also input a CNAME record. So we have our CNAME www. And then our this information here. So we'll go into we'll create a new record. We'll make it a CNAME record www. And then we'll input that in there. Click on yes, and then there we go. So now our information is inputted into here. We can refresh the page, and then hopefully if we refresh this a couple times, we can see that our valid configuration redirects to Lunar Labs. And then if we click on this, you can see that it opens up to our site with our custom URL for pretty much free. And I made this in pretty much an hour and a half. And that was also going through this tutorial. So it really isn't that hard to get your own site up and running custom exactly the way you want. And you can take this as far as you want. There's all kinds of fun JavaScript packages and React components that you can play around with. There's a big community of people making cool, fun things that you can put on your website. And you can pretty much ask ChatGPT to make those elements for you, talk to the chatbot to make those elements, and then put them on your site for pretty much no cost. It's really fun to play around with, and definitely a really useful skill, because you basically don't really have to know how to program except for know the gist of how it works, which I really do think is how programming is going to be headed into the future. It's not really going to be based on do you know how to code everything exactly, but more so how do you know how to get what you want out of these chatbots to create digital assets, websites, whatever you want. And yeah, I think it's a really fun, cool skill. This is how I've been building my websites for my clients, which also, if you want me to build your own website, I have a great portfolio linked on horizonlabsai.com that you can go check out. Featuring a lot of my work, and I can also build your company an amazing website to do pretty much anything you want hosted for free. So yeah, that's basically it for me. If you found any value out of this video whatsoever, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really does help me out. But yeah, that's it for me. I'll see you guys in the next one.